All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today and attending our EnCorps 101 webinar. I also want to thank you for your interest in our program. My name is Bethany Orozco, and I'm the Southern California Program and Recruitment Director. And I'm really excited to have you all here today and tell you more about our program and answer any questions that you might have. Thanks for letting me know that you can hear me. And we'll go ahead and get started. And I also want to let you know if you have a question at any point during the webinar, which will last about 60 minutes, you can go ahead and type it into the comment box. And I will actually pause our presentation a few times throughout, and I'll also leave some time at the end to answer any questions that you might have. Also, our webinar is being recorded, so if you would like to listen back to it, we'll be sending you the link to that recording after the webinar is done. Thanks again for coming. So I want to tell you a little bit about our team. Our program and recruitment team consists of myself and my colleague in Northern California, whose name is David. He's not on the line with us today, but if you do have Northern California specific questions, I will do my best to answer them. And I'll also provide David's contact information at the end so that you can reach out to him as well. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got involved in education in California. As a college student, I was actually a volunteer in the Minneapolis public schools in the Great Midwest. And I saw how far behind my students were in math. I was actually studying math in my undergraduate and working with elementary school students. It was really unbelievable to see just how far behind they were. And the Minneapolis public schools are pretty low income. There are some pretty low income schools, one of which I was volunteering at. So I decided that I really wanted to try my hand at teaching. And I joined a program called Teach for America, which is a national corps of teachers. And through Teach for America, I taught high school math and science at Da Vinci Schools in Hawthorne and completed a secondary math credential at Loyola Marymount University. It was a great experience, and most recently I was a recruiter with a charter school in the San Fernando Valley called Puck Schools. Recruiting teachers was challenging work, but really exciting. And what I realized as I was a recruiter for Puck Schools is that it was incredibly difficult to find high-quality math and science teachers, and especially teachers who had prior professional experience and could really bring science and math to life for our students. And so I joined EnCorps to hopefully inspire more professionals to pursue teaching as a career. Many of whom I think have always considered it, but didn't necessarily know where to start. So I would love to know who is in our audience today, and if you could just briefly type into the comment box what STEM profession you identify with. Let me know what your most recent career was, what you're currently doing, and what your background is. All right, I see a couple of responses coming in. Researcher. We have some engineers on the line. Give you a couple more seconds to type into the comment box. Some IT professionals, biotechnology, wow, and additional researchers, engineers, wonderful. Well, it sounds like we have a really diverse audience. It's always helpful to know what your backgrounds are and how those could potentially fit into our program. So to discuss EnCorps, we really need to begin with why we exist. Why is there a need for high-quality math and science teachers? So I like to start with some data. This graph actually shows students that take California math standardized tests. And these are the CST tests, which actually have been replaced by Common Core and the Smarter Balanced Assessments. But in California, all of our students used to take the CST exams. And we can see here that in grade 11, about 34% of our students are proficient or advanced in Algebra 1. Algebra 1 is kind of a baseline math requirement in high school. It's one of the first math classes that our students would take. They go on to geometry, Algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus, and only 34% of our 11th graders are proficient or advanced, which means that there's a significant amount of our students that are testing as basic or below basic and are not even proficient in this basic math. If we look at the data disaggregated by socioeconomic status, it's even more bleak. We can see here the solid lines are our regular economic population, and then we have the dotted line. Those are our low-income students, and we know that they're low income because their families apply for free and reduced lunch. So if you take a look at the dark blue and realize that only 24% of low-income 11th graders are proficient or advanced in Algebra 1, while 45% of their higher income peers are proficient or advanced. So it is it's a really bleak outlook for those students, and this is broadly known as the achievement gap. That's what we call it in education. Further, this is not limited to just socioeconomic status. You can see here that race can play a factor, and we see trends that are very disturbing amongst our Hispanic and African American students. So the point is that there are enduring achievement gaps, especially in STEM, and they disproportionately affect low-income and minority students. This is something that EnCorps addresses head-on. We place all of our educators in high-needs schools where at least 40% of students qualify for free and reduced lunch. And we believe that education is an act of social justice. And in order to make education more equitable, we need to make sure lower-income and minority students get high-quality educators. In addition, there is a great need for math and science teachers right now, especially in the state of California. In fact, our school partners are often relying on us to fill the needs that they have, and even then, we are not able to fill all of their positions. In 2010, President Barack Obama said that we need 100,000 new qualified math and science teachers by the year 2020. We're 5 years away from that currently. In 2008, a study noted that in the next 10 years, California would need 33,000 more math and science teachers. That study was done a little while ago, but the demand remains the same, if not greater, as baby boomers retire and fewer undergraduates are going into credentialing programs. A lot of people going into the EnCorps program or considering it ask David and I, will there be jobs for me? And the answer is yes. David and I receive phone calls from principals and district recruiters on a weekly or monthly basis, hoping to speak with our EnCorps educators about their opportunities. And as I mentioned, our EnCorps educators can't even fill all of their needs. So obviously this is a huge problem, and as STEM professionals, I'm sure you are aware of why. The jobs that this generation of students will go into will use even more math and science than we probably do today. And if a student leaves high school without a solid foundation in science and math, their future opportunities are going to be extremely limited. Looking at our society at large, a lot of innovation is also driven by science, math, technology, and engineering. So in order to maintain our global economic competitiveness, we really need our students and our future generation to have the STEM skills that employers are going to need. And lastly, we already know this, there will definitely be problems inherited by the next generation that we are probably causing today that will require strong STEM knowledge. So we've heard all about the problem. Not only do low-income and minority students not receive the best science and math education currently, but also there's a huge gap in the number of high-quality math and science teachers. So the problem is kind of twofold, and we must ask ourselves, what's the best way forward? So the federal government came up with a strategic plan in 2013, and I've highlighted 3 of their items in red. First, we need to improve STEM instruction by preparing 100,000 new excellent STEM teachers by 2020, which I highlighted before. Second, we need to give our youth an authentic STEM experience in school that answers the question of relevance. Kids always say, why is this important for me? And we need to be able to answer that question. Third, we need to better serve groups that are historically underrepresented in STEM fields. So I highlighted these 3 items in red because they happen at the middle and high school level. And these are exactly the pieces that EnCorps addresses and that we've developed a solution for. So our solution is to take people who have been in industry and put them into middle and high school classrooms as teachers and tutors. As a STEM professional, you have the background and experience to be highly relevant to middle and high school students. We believe that with our support, you are uniquely positioned to use your talent and real-world expertise in a classroom. If you have a curiosity about education, and I'm guessing that you do if you're on this webinar, and you've thought about getting into it, we can help you explore that. It's not required up front when you join EnCorps' program that you know you want to be a teacher. It's enough that you are interested in exploring education and willing to commit a few hours a week to volunteering with students at first. And I'll tell you more about that as we get into our program. So why do we believe in science, technology, engineering, and math industry professionals? We believe that STEM professionals, you all on the phone call right now, know your content. As a professional chemist or, let's say, engineer, you have lived and breathed that craft every day. And unfortunately, a lot of times, teachers go into teaching whatever subject they have without even an undergraduate degree in that subject. We know that STEM professionals are passionate about their area of expertise, and you know why it is relevant. You can relate the real-world experience for students, and this is important because students find their learning experience is often pretty abstract. They don't know when they're going to use it. But when STEM professionals relate it to a real career, students are inspired, and research actually shows that they're more likely to stay engaged and stay in school. Also, STEM professionals can serve as role models for their students. Some students from under-resourced areas have never met a professional engineer or someone with an advanced degree. They might feel that these professions are really out of reach for them, and that's truly unfortunate. So by placing students in contact with STEM professionals, we can alleviate that misconception. And a lot of times, you all have access to opportunities that students do not have. You might be able to say to a student, in my old job, I did research, and in fact, we can go visit the lab. And that you might be introducing a student to a world that they have never seen before. Both David and I were teachers as our first career. And I can speak for myself that as a result, I didn't have quite the same access or real-world knowledge of the math and science subjects that I taught. And so I really believe in bringing in the people who are doing that type of work every day and can talk to students about why it's important and what kind of career aspects or aspirations they could have by pursuing math and science. I'm going to pause here for a quick moment and see if there are any questions so far, and also let you know that I will be talking about credentialing and our program as well. So I'll just pause for a minute and let you type in if you have any questions. All right, we'll go ahead and move on, and I will pause a couple additional times for questions. And I also want to let you know that when you ask a question, I will also do my best to answer it, and then I'll unmute you so that I can find out if I answered your question and if you have any follow-up questions as well. So let's get into our program. As an organization, EnCorps is the bridge between a STEM professional that might be wondering, how do I get involved in education? Since EnCorps began, we have had over 450 people go through our program, and these are just the faces of a few of our educators. I love these quotes, and so I'm going to read you a little bit of the quote from Tyran, who was a pharmaceutical chemist and became a teacher. She said that my greatest hope is that my students realize their worth and importance and grasp the fact that education is an important part of their future. It will lead them to opportunities that they wouldn't have without it. I want them to realize that learning is fun. I want them to know that I am on their side. Additionally, we have a video linked here at the bottom of this slide if you want to write this down or go to our website, where you can see the faces of many more of our EnCorps educators. So when we look at our educators by the numbers, on average, our educators have 17 years of professional STEM experience, and 80% of them have advanced degrees. We work with over 262 schools, districts, and after-school programs across California. And to date, our educators have affected over 13,000 students in California. In our last recruitment season, our 2014 to 15 season, we saw over 600 applications and accepted 86 educators into our 2015 cohort. I'm going to speak specifically now about our full career pathway program, but I will also touch upon our STEM expert tutoring opportunity in the coming slides as well. So once you have been accepted into our program, EnCorps offers a wealth of support and benefits, which are all free to our educators. This includes getting a taste of education through volunteer tutoring and guest teaching, support with credentialing and the CSET examinations, ongoing professional development, and a couple of the things that I think are the most valuable assets that EnCorps brings, which is access to our network of schools and districts, and also a cohort of STEM professionals who are your peers in this journey. I'm going to get into all of these in more detail. So first, let's look at what the potential timeline or pathway could look like with EnCorps. We are currently recruiting and interviewing for EnCorps educators who are interested in both our full career pathway, or our credentialing track, and transitioning into a career in teaching, and our STEM expert tutors, who are STEM professionals that commit to volunteering their time in a high-needs public school or after-school program for around 2 to 5 hours a week. So whether you are following our career pathway or our credential track or becoming a tutor, your time with EnCorps would kick off in our Summer Residential Institute, which is a 3-day professional development event that happens in June. At this PD event, we cover your room and board and your expenses to get there. And then in the summer, we would match your interests, preferences, and geographic location to a school or after-school program to tutor or guest teach in math, science, engineering, or technology. Then you receive support and guidance as you go into your tutoring or guest teaching placement. In the first year, David and I, our program directors, ask our educators, what do you think? Is this something you like and want to continue? Do you want to pursue teaching as a career? And then our educators can follow one of 3 pathways. So if you feel like you really enjoy volunteering, you find it very meaningful, but are not ready to become a teacher, then we would ask you to continue to volunteer, and we would find volunteer opportunities that would work with a full-time work schedule, and you'd be considered one of our STEM expert tutors, which is the blue box at the bottom. If you decide that you definitely do want to pursue a credential and teaching as a career, then you have two options. You can go into Career and Technical Education Credentialing, which is the green box, or get a single subject credential, which is the red box. I will get into credentialing in more detail as well, but essentially this shows you how you might progress over time and how quickly we can get you into a classroom. So if you decide to get a credential and you go ahead with a program, when you come out of that program, you'll be ready to become a full-time teacher, and EnCorps supports you in connecting you with school sites, recruiters, and principals to support you in finding that full-time teaching job. You might be wondering what the time commitment is throughout this whole process. And it varies by the stage that you're at with EnCorps or which year you're in. So all of our educators, as I mentioned, kick off with our Summer Residential Institute. And you'll see that there's a red star here because this is our recommended timeline, but there are definitely areas for flexibility. Some of our educators interview and they accept our offer in the fall, and they really want to get started with doing their volunteer tutoring, their guest teaching, and applying even to a credential program. And it is possible to get started right away, and so we can be flexible around that as well. Our typical timeline, though, is that you would start in the summer, and after Summer Institute, we would have an on-site orientation meeting at your volunteer site that we match you with. So the summer is a pretty low time commitment. In year one, in the fall, school will start, and you will volunteer around 2 to 5 hours a week as a tutor or guest teacher. That year, you'll also attend our Fall and Spring Institutes, which are one day, typically on a Saturday. And we also have monthly online meetings, which we consider our office hours and training, and some informal get-togethers. At that time, you would also be deciding what your track was going to be. So you'd be thinking about credentialing or STEM expert tutoring for the future. If you decide to go with credentialing, in your second year with EnCorps, you will be completing a credentialing program, which can be part-time, full-time, online, or in person. Also, our Summer Residential Institute, Fall and Spring Institutes are also offered to you in your second year and actually throughout your whole career with EnCorps, but in the second year with EnCorps, it is optional. Then we'll also have opt-in trainings for a credential program and full-time teachers. If you decide your pathway is as a STEMX tutor, then in your second year, you would be volunteering around 2 to 5 hours per week. So let's get into more detail about each of the things that EnCorps offers. So as I mentioned, all of our educators, whether you're coming in to EnCorps as a STEM expert tutor, or if you know that you'd like to become a teacher, you will start with what we call our pre-service. We first offer you a chance to try your hand at education and get a taste of what it's like to work in a middle or high school classroom. We give you an opportunity to experience this in 3 different ways. Volunteer tutoring allows you to work with students one-on-one in a class or an after-school setting. Guest teaching allows you to observe a host teacher in their classroom, work with small groups, and design and deliver whole group lessons and receive mentoring and feedback from that host teacher. And curriculum-based teaching is an opportunity to create and use an existing curriculum to teach your own class with extensive support from the site as well as EnCorps. These are all what we call pre-service, and we often our educators actually meet and connect with the teachers that they're working with, the administrators, principals, and a lot of these pre-service opportunities actually turn into future job opportunities. I want to also take a quick moment to talk about our STEM expert tutors in particular. Some of you on the call might be thinking that you're not quite interested in going into a full career transition into teaching, but that you would like to get involved. So our STEM expert tutors would be a great program for you. You will start off just as any EnCorps educator, and you'll get matched with a host teacher or an after-school program in that pre-service. And the difference is that in your second year with EnCorps, you'll be doing these 2 to 5 hours of volunteering per week and not going into credentialing. Our STEM expert tutors are also given the same training and support opportunities as our credentialed track educators. This is a high support and low risk way to get involved with middle and high schools. We do tutor training, we have handbooks, of course our in-person professional development, informal get-togethers, and our online and via phone office hours. Are there any specific questions to our STEM expert tutors? I'll go ahead and just pause for a few moments to let you type into the chat box if you have some questions at this time. So I see a question that has come up. I have a single subject science credential that had expired. Do I need to activate it? And this is from Mark. So Mark, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about our prerequisite requirements. And actually one of our prerequisites is that you do not have a California single subject or CTE credential. If you have an out-of-state credential or even an out-of-the-country credential, EnCorps might be able to help you. But if you've had a California science credential that just expired, then our program probably would not be right for you. So Mark, I'm going to go ahead and just unmute you really quickly and make sure that I answered your question, or if you have any follow-up questions. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes.
Great. Any follow-up questions from you?
Well, that was my main question because my credentials expired and I didn't renew it.
Mm-hmm. And it is a California credential?
Yes, California preliminary credential.
Right. Okay. So because you have already possessed a California teaching credential, our program probably would not be the right fit for you. But if you'd like to talk with me offline, we can talk about your specific situation, and I might even be able to offer some advice about how you could renew your credential.
Okay.
So my contact information will be up at the end of the presentation as well, as probably in some of the emails you've received. So feel free to reach out to me about your individual situation.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. All right, I see a couple other questions. Location of informal get-togethers in San Diego. Surendra was asking. So yes, we have informal get-togethers in each of our regions. So as the Southern California Program Director covering Orange County, San Diego, and Los Angeles, we do have informal get-togethers that will happen in the San Diego area, such as school tours or happy hours, or small get-togethers, as well as the Los Angeles/Orange County area. And this similarly happens in our Sacramento and San Francisco regions. I see another question here from Sherman. Do you have instances where the hiring age is over 65? So Sherman, we have a lot of participants in our program that are 50s, 60s, 70s years old. So definitely you would be in great company. And I think that, yes, we have seen people who have been hired over the age of 65. So actually EnCorps began as a second career for mid-career changers. So our average age of educators is around 40 or so, and you will definitely meet people in our program who are in their 70s or maybe even their 80s. So I hope that that helps answer your question, Sherman, and I will just briefly unmute you to make sure that you don't have, if you have any follow-up questions. So Sherman, can you hear me?
Oh yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Great.
There's no follow-up questions. I'm okay with that.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much for your question.
Oh, no problem.
So I see a question from Larry. What if you live in a rural area? Larry, that's going to depend on what rural area you live in. As I mentioned just a little while ago, our supported geographic regions are the Sacramento, San Francisco Bay Area, Orange County, LA Metro area, and San Diego. Those, you don't necessarily need to be in those counties in order to be in our supported geographic area. It will depend on your zip code and how far out you are. So for example, in the LA area, we work with people all the way up in Ventura County and all the way down to Long Beach. So it really depends on where your location is. If you'd like to find out if your specific location is in our geographic region, let me know. And I will actually just unmute you really quickly, Larry. Just a second. Hi, Larry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
What's your location?
Atascadero, California, halfway between LA and San Francisco.
Okay, so unfortunately, EnCorps does not support that area currently. We might in the future. We are quickly expanding and we'll be expanding to sort of the Central Coast and Central California. So perhaps in the future, but unfortunately right now we don't. If you want to follow up with an email to me, I might be able to send you some additional resources though if you're still interested in getting into teaching.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for your question, Larry. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. And again, there will be more opportunities to ask questions at the end of the presentation and throughout. So actually, many of you had some questions about our locations here. So hopefully this will give you a little bit more of an understanding of where we work. These are some of our placement school partners in the Northern California region. We actually work with, as I mentioned before, over 262 school and district partners. So this is just a handful of who we're working with, but you can take a look and see if any of them are close to you. As I mentioned, it's not an exhaustive list, and you can actually find most of our school partners on our website as well. In the Southern California region, these are some of the schools and after-school programs that we're working with there as well. I also want to just mention that we make sure that our educators are placed with experienced host teachers who are considered to be best practice teachers and are able to give feedback and make your experience really fun and informative. And the trade-off is pretty great. Our placement partners, who you're seeing on this page, are really enthusiastic about working with EnCorps educators because they get content experts who can speak to students about how, math and science is useful, and our educators get on-the-ground experience, feedback, observation, as well as pre-service hours if they decide to go into a credentialing program. So getting into what we offer in a little more depth, as I mentioned, we have our professional development opportunities. We have 3 formal in-person get-togethers each year, our one-day fall and spring institutes, which are usually held on a Saturday and held regionally, so Southern California separate from Northern California. And we also have our 3-day summer residential institute. These focus on topics that are relevant to you as a STEM expert tutor or a career changer, which include classroom management, lesson planning, project-based learning, the Common Core state standards, the new generation science standards. So there are some great opportunities to learn from and also network with your peers. Our 2015 cohort will kick off this summer at our Summer Residential Institute, and we already have the date. It's going to be June 24th to the 26th. We also offer mentoring and coaching in the form of our program directors, myself and David, who are both former math and science teachers. We are available to our educators anytime to answer questions and work on aspects of their teaching. We also encourage our educators to take advantage of the cohort of EnCorps peers who go through the same experiences as they do. I know in my own experience going into teaching, my Teach for America cohort was invaluable in providing me support, lesson planning together, talking about our experiences, and providing resources to me as well. Next, I'm going to get into a little bit on teacher credentialing. I am only going to scratch the surface on teacher credentialing. If you go ahead and apply to our program and you're invited to an interview, I'll go into credentialing in more depth, and we would also have many resources around credentialing for our EnCorps educators. So we offer our educators guidance with credentialing programs. There's a huge range of programs to choose from. Most are through colleges and universities, and some are offered at the district or county offices of education. And these also range widely in price, from anywhere from $55,000 at USC to around $8,000 at the Cal State universities. There are full and part-time programs online and in person, so there's a lot of flexibility around how you would be interested in getting a credential. And EnCorps has research we've put together on the programs available to people, including the cost, application process, deadlines, and we can also point you to grants and scholarships available. We have some pretty great credentialing partners through the universities, and they definitely recognize EnCorps educators as invaluable teacher candidates, and many of them actually do have scholarships available for math and science teaching, as well as residency programs. So we obviously here support single subject and CTE credential programs. So I'll tell you a little bit about CTE Teaching. Not many people think of career and technical education when they think of teaching in a middle or high school, because it's only really beginning to gain popularity, and also you probably traditionally think of becoming a math teacher or becoming a chemistry teacher. So career and technical education, or CTE, is on the rise because the state has invested $1.25 billion. Career and technical education prepares students to be career, college, and community ready as they connect students to real career pathways such as engineering and biomedical science. There are 15 industry sectors, and EnCorps supports 8 of these, which are STEM subjects. CTE credentialing doesn't take as long as a single subject credential, and it's typically much more reasonably priced. It's a really great option for our EnCorps educators because you all are STEM professionals that have industry experience, and a CTE credential will take into account your experience and that you are the content expert, and instead of teaching you content, they'll teach you how to teach. Many of the CTE programs are also online, which makes them really convenient. It should be noted that if you earn a CTE credential, you cannot teach single subject classes, math, chemistry, biology, and vice versa, but it is also possible to earn both a CTE credential and a single subject, and often our educators will go for a CTE first so they can get into the classroom right away and begin teaching and earning an income that way, and then they might go back and earn a single subject credential as well, which complements their CTE credential. These are the traditional single subject credentialing areas as well as the CTE credential areas that EnCorps supports. I'm going to take one more pause, and I just have a few more slides after this, and take any of your questions about credentialing at this time. So I'll give you a couple minutes or a couple seconds to type into the comment box if you have questions about credentialing. I see a question from Larry that says no mathematics. Larry, a math credential would be, in CTE. So a math credential would be considered a single subject. In order to obtain a math credential, you would go through the process of getting a single subject math, which includes taking the CSET examinations in math, as well as the CBEST, which is a basic skills test, and some other requirements. For math, there's actually 2 possibilities. You can get a math credential full range, which means you can teach 6th through 12th grade all the way up to calculus, or you can get a foundational level math credential, which means that you can teach from 6th to 12th grade, but you cannot teach pre-calculus, calculus, or typically trigonometry. If you choose a foundational level math credential, you only need to take and pass 2 out of the 3 CSET examinations. So there's not a math option in the CTE credentialing because CTE specifically follows industry sectors. Larry, I'm going to go ahead and just unmute you really quick here, see if you have any follow-up questions. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask a follow-up about the engineering and design on the CTE side.
Yeah.
I wouldn't imagine there was that much engineering and design classes in the high school level.
Oh, I'm really glad you asked that question because sometimes I think I brush over this a little bit in our presentations. You would actually be quite surprised, I think, about how many high schools are doing engineering now. So what I didn't get into about the CTE credential is that because there's this money coming from the state, many high schools are implementing these career pathways. And I'll give you an example in the Los Angeles area. We work with the STEM Academy of Hollywood, which is a Los Angeles unified school, and they're considered a linked learning school. And that means that they have 2 pathways that their students are able to follow. One is engineering, and the other is biomedical science. So when their students enter as freshmen, they decide, do I want to follow the engineering pathway or the biomed? And then they actually take those courses for 4 years. So they'll take engineering for 4 years as an elective or biomed for 4 years as an elective. Schools are doing this because they found that by connecting these career pathways with student interest and, real-world projects and real-world professionals and internships, students are much more engaged in school, and they're also prepared to go on to college and pursue, let's say, an engineering degree. There's a way to find out, which schools in your area have these career pathways. So if you're interested, I can also send you a link after our presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. That was a great question. Let's see. So qualifications needed for health science and medical technology CTE from Surendra. So the qualifications for getting a CTE credential, whichever industry sector you're getting your credential in, are basically the same. You need to have at least 3 years of professional experience in that industry sector. And actually the CTE programs specify that you need, I believe that it's 2 years within the last 10 years or 1 year within the last 5 years, and you need to show employment verification that you worked in that industry specifically. In addition to that, the CTE credential will require the U.S. Constitution test, which is also what's required for a single subject, as well as I believe it's a CPR class. But essentially, your industry experience is what allows you to get a CTE credential. So Surendra, I'm going to go ahead and just unmute you really quick, make sure that I answered your question. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, thanks. So the second part, as I continued on the question, was that does a biotech or a pharmaceutical company professional or in that profession, would they be able to qualify for getting the CTE in health science and medical technology?
Sorry, tell me what your background was again?
Biotech and pharmaceutical company professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, it definitely depends on specifically what your job description or what it was that you did in that profession. But that sounds like it would definitely qualify for that industry sector. And additionally, when our educators go for a CTE credential, often they actually get more than one industry sector that fits into what they used to do as a career. So for example, we have one educator who was a transportation engineer, and she was able to get both the transportation sector as well as the engineering and design. So there might even be multiple ones that fit. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, just checking if there's any other questions. And I see that Coach said CAMS is a high school in Carson that also has students take engineering and design. Awesome. There's lots of schools. I mean, there's multiple schools just within the LA Unified School District, as well as many other districts and charter schools that are doing this type of work. So there's a lot of opportunity for CTE teachers now and definitely in the future. So I just have a couple last things to say, and I want to tell you about, all right, you've learned all about EnCorps. What are the next steps? So first, I'd love to tell you a short story about a student of mine from my experience teaching. His name was Greg. So I was teaching in the Hawthorne area, which for those of you in Northern California, that's in the LA metro area. And Greg became a student of mine halfway through the year because his other school was not working out for him. He was not completing work, he was not paying attention in class, and he was generally pretty disengaged. My school was a little different. We were called Da Vinci. We used project-based learning where in each project students were asked to tackle a real-world math or science issue. And I was teaching 9th grade geometry at the time. I found that when Greg entered my class, he was just that, disengaged. He was not interested in the content really at all. I tried math games, I tried mini projects, interesting lessons, group work. It wasn't until we began our project, our next project, that I saw Greg really light up. So I tasked the students with creating a green space around the Hawthorne area in the school community and building structures on it by using their geometry skills and a software called Google SketchUp. And what really lit up Greg and what really changed him around was that I brought in a real architect to speak to our class one day. And I let my students know that an architect was coming in the next day and they should prepare some questions. And I was shocked to see that Greg actually prepared questions. He did his homework. He asked advice of this person in his project, and actually he connected with him on an ongoing basis from that point on his project. And he totally lit up and was completely inspired by meeting a real architect and really inspired by tackling this real-world problem and how it connected to a potential career opportunity in his future. So Greg is just one of my low-income students that has a story like that, and just one way that, this architect got involved in inspiring my students. So I really do believe it's so important for our highest need students to meet all of you who are on the call today and get inspired by your current or past work and really see the potential in a math or science career. So I hope you will consider taking the next step to join EnCorps and get involved. And this is how you can do that. So the first thing is our prerequisite criteria. So most of you on this call probably do meet this criteria because you are STEM professionals, I can see already. You do have to live in one of the areas that EnCorps serves, which is the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, and Sacramento, and possess at least 3 years of full-time STEM industry work. You have to be fully eligible to work in the U.S., hold an undergraduate degree with a GPA of 2.75 or higher, and not already hold a California credential. This is our baseline criteria because we've seen that these types of people are truly successful with the student population that we serve and are also really successful in obtaining a credential and going on to be a teacher. This is the same criteria for our STEM expert tutors as well. So if you do meet our prerequisite criteria, you can go ahead and complete an application online. We use the same application for our STEM expert tutors and our credential track educators. And our online application includes 5 short answer questions, and you'll also attach your resume and some basic information. I also suggest in doing your short answer questions that you maybe type them out into a Word document and then copy them into our online application. So from there, if we read through your application and it seems like a good fit, we will invite you to one of our in-person interview days. These dates are our interview days for the fall and their corresponding application deadlines. We do accept people on a rolling basis, so it's definitely to your advantage to apply and also to interview early. From there, if we accept you into our program, we would send you an offer letter that you would sign and send back. And on that offer letter, we would basically reiterate our expectations for our program. We expect that you would participate for 2 years, participate in our Summer Residential Institute, which this year I mentioned is June 24th to the 26th. And we also expect that you would volunteer with students for at least 1 academic year and participate in and take advantage of our training and support opportunities. Then for our credential track educators, our expectation is that you complete a credential and teach in a high needs school for at least 3 years. For our STEM expert tutors, our expectation is that you then volunteer for an additional year. And I want to reiterate that you don't have to know that you want to become a teacher when you join EnCorps. You might be going into it hoping to be a STEM volunteer. And at any point, you can actually sort of jump to the other career track or pathway within our program, which is the great thing about EnCorps. You'll have access to all of the resources that everyone else does in our program, no matter what track you're on. And then you determine what your outcome is at the end. So lastly, our link to our website, encorps.org, and our application. And if you have follow-up questions, please get in touch with us. You can reach out to David for Northern California or myself for Southern California. And I will also make this recording available to all of you. I'm going to email you a link to it at the end of this webinar. So with that, thank you so much for joining us, and I will stay on the line for at least the next 5 to 10 minutes to answer any more questions that you might have. Again, thank you for joining us, and I hope that you'll consider joining our program. Oh, Catherine, thank you so much for bringing up the question, is there a cost to join? The answer is no. There's no cost to join EnCorps. We are a nonprofit, and in fact, there's no cost to our school partners as well. So all of the things that we offer are free to our educators, free to our partners. We also, in addition, cover some of the costs that you might encounter, such as CSET study guides, as well as some of the transportation, room, and board to our in-person professional development events. So thanks for bringing that up, Catherine. If you've got any additional questions, just go ahead and put them in the comment box. All right, it doesn't look like there are any other questions that have come up. Again, I'll be on the line for about 2 more minutes. And I see some thank yous. Thank you all for joining me on this webinar, and thanks for your time. I hope you all have a great day. All right, I see a question, Larry, from you. How long should I wait for Central Coast opportunities? That's a great question. I believe that at EnCorps we will be expanding to the Central California. I would say within the next 3 years that's within our long-term plan. I know that's a long time to wait, 3 years, and I hope that you'll consider getting involved maybe in some tutoring or in teaching in a different way if that's what you're looking for. But we can definitely stay in touch if you'd like us to get in touch with you once we are there. Larry, I'm going to just unmute you one more time, see if you have any other questions.
Well, I'm just curious, if you start the process ahead of time, then wouldn't you be more ready when the time came?
Yeah, you know, we and EnCorps would love to expand to Central California and the Central Coast. That's definitely in our plans. I will tell you, we probably are going to expand to some other areas, perhaps San Bernardino or San Gabriel Valley, closer to LA first. And it's really about our organization growth. We're a pretty small team. We're actually the two of us, David and I, as well as our executive director, Catherine. And then we have some support from part-time members of our team as well. So we're a pretty small but mighty team, and we do have to grow our team before we can expand to those areas.
I have family in Sacramento, so it's not completely out of the question that I could go up there for a while.
Oh, sure. Yeah. To be quite honest, if you the really important part about being in one of our service areas is the pre-service component, where you complete your tutoring and guest teaching. From there, it's possible that you could go into a credentialing program in your area and also get a full-time teaching job in your area. The only thing is that because we aren't currently on the ground there, we do not have connections there. So if you
in
were,
Sacramento?
you know, oh no, I mean in your Central California area. Yeah.
Say I moved to Sacramento for a year or two and started the program with the intention of, I don't have a job right now, so I can go anywhere I want. So.
Sure, yeah. That is definitely a possibility. And if that's your intention, if you would be willing to move to Sacramento and do the first year of EnCorps there, then definitely indicate that on your application so that when David sees it, he knows, what's going on. And yeah, we could work with you if you were in Sacramento.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Larry.
I'll try and see if you have my email. If you could, I'll try and remember David at encore.org.
Yeah, I can email it to you after the presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a question from Sherman. Are there any grants to cover credentialing programs? I'm going to see if you're still on the line, Sherman. Let's see. Looks like you are. So yes, there are definitely grants and scholarships to cover the credentialing process. And we provide those resources to you when you join EnCorps. We can tell you all about those, but I can talk about just a couple really briefly. We often tell our educators to look into the TEACH grant, which is a grant that will actually allow you to repay any loans that you might take out in the credentialing process by teaching in a high-needs school for several years. So that's one that's a federal grant that definitely works for our educators and the schools that we serve. In addition, there are scholarships available at the CSUs, the Cal State Universities, called MISTI, Math and Science Teaching. And our educators are definitely eligible for those types of scholarships, so that's something you could look into and apply to. EnCorps can help you out with that. Also, many of our credentialing partners have residency programs where they actually give you a stipend in order to complete the residency. So I'll give you one example, which is the LA Urban Teacher Residency, where you spend a year under a mentor teacher in an LA Unified school. During that year, you're earning your credential, and you also are given a $25,000 stipend. So that covers the cost of credentialing and also some living expenses as well. Sherman, I'm just going to go ahead and unmute you and see if you have any follow-up questions. So you can go ahead.
I really don't have any more questions, except maybe, actually there's one. The online credentialing program, is it solely online, or do I have to take classes? Some classes?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on which online credential program you go for. There's a CTE program through the Orange County Department of Education that is completely online, so that does not include any in-school portion, no student teaching or anything like that. That's for a CTE credential. For a single subject credential, there are a couple online programs. Cal State Dominguez Hills has a transition to teaching program that is almost all online, but they do include about a 4-week lab school in the summer where you need to be there about full-time for the 4 weeks to get some student teaching experience. UCLA Extension also has an online program, and theirs actually does not require any in-person. So you do all of your courses online. So there are several different options. Some are completely online and some are sort of half and half.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us and for your questions. All right, I actually see quite a few more questions that came up. So if I don't get to all of your questions right now, I will definitely follow up with you all by email, but I'll try and get to them if you want to stay on the line. So I see a question here that says, I have a PhD in a biology subject. I can teach math and biology with about over 15 years of research experience and teaching undergraduates and graduates in the lab. How long will it take to get the credentials for me? That question was from Coat. It depends on what type of credential you want to get. And it's amazing that you have a PhD in biology and you've been teaching for so long. Unfortunately, if you want a single subject credential, you still have to go back to the university to get that. And those credentials are typically 12 to 18 months. The nice thing is there are some opportunities where you can take just a couple courses and then begin teaching while you earn the credential. So there's a credential that's called an intern credential where you'll have to take the CSET examinations. It's possible to bypass those with your PhD if the college that you went to has an authorization, if they can send a letter that says, you can bypass those subject exams. Then you would potentially take some courses online and then get hired in a school and then take your credentialing courses in the evening or online. So you could potentially be in the classroom in the fall and have started that program, let's say, in the spring. You'd be then earning a teacher's salary in the fall plus benefits, but you'd still be pursuing your credential at that time. And so you'd be doing that for about a year in order to get your preliminary credential. So Coat, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, see if you have any follow-up questions.
No, I don't think I have any follow-up questions.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for your question. All right, another question here. Is the undergraduate grade point average prerequisite inviolate? Or can you include additional grade averages from graduate degrees? From Jeffrey. So Jeffrey, part of the reason why we have the undergraduate GPA of a 2.75 is that that's actually a requirement from university partners in order to enter into their credentialing program. There is a small possibility that you could still get a credential with at least a 2.5 GPA. That would typically be at some of the private universities or a CTE credential, but unfortunately not through EnCorps. So I'll go ahead and unmute you and see if you have any follow-up questions.
No, I think that's fine. Thank you. I'll follow up that separately.
Okay, thanks so much, Jeffrey. All right, I see another question. All right, actually that was it. We got through all of the questions. Thank you so much to everyone for joining me on the webinar today. Again, if you have additional questions or individual specific questions, please go ahead and email me, and I will also send the recording of this webinar via email. Thanks again.